Attracting Fiona's attention, that person called out, "Miss Fiona." Earl Aaron Clovis smiled like a friendly beauty and said, "I didn't expect to meet you here." Seeing him, Fiona was startled and exclaimed, "Earl Aaron Clovis." Fiona recalled the scene of Aaron Clovis having tea with her, the two holding hands. He also said if she needed his strength, he would be ready to cooperate. Fiona thought to herself, she also had many things to ask Aaron Clovis about the shadow research. Recently she had lost her memory, so she couldn't exchange information with him. But putting aside her own purpose, Fiona thought, but now I have to find Sigrun first. Too fast, too dangerous. After thinking that, Fiona bowed politely and said to Aaron Clovis, "My lord, I know it's rude to do this when meeting you again after a long time, but I currently have urgent matters and must leave, so I ask your permission to go first." Seeing Fiona's urgent and flustered attitude, Aaron Clovis, sharp as a hawk, was silent for a moment, then asked her, "Are you here to find the prince?" Fiona, hit right in the heart, froze for a few seconds, stiff as glue. She was startled, then raised her head, her face showing a gentle smile like the morning light of Aaron Clovis. Fiona asked, "How do you know?" Suddenly, Earl Aaron Clovis turned and started walking, leaving Fiona confused. She asked, "Earl Aaron Clovis?" as he turned his back and walked away, then said to Fiona, still expressionless behind, "Follow me." In the castle garden, Fiona and Aaron Clovis strode along the path. Aaron Clovis walked ahead and said to Fiona, who followed like a puppy, "I heard you were injured recently, and had to stay in bed. I'm glad you have fully recovered." Hearing that, Fiona quickly replied, "Thank you. My wound wasn't very serious." Suddenly, Fiona hesitated for a moment, then showed a hesitant expression and asked Aaron Clovis, but seeing she wanted to say something, he suddenly turned slightly to look. Fiona asked, "Do you know where Sigrun is?" Noticing Fiona's worried face, Aaron Clovis still looked indifferent and cheeky, smiling, and said, "This is the first time Miss has shown such a sincere expression to me." Feeling like she was being teased, Fiona helplessly said, "Please don't tease me anymore. Tell me anything you know, please." Aaron Clovis kept smiling, speaking to Fiona, "Sorry, I'm a bit mischievous." Then suddenly, "Too fast, too dangerous?" Aaron Clovis flipped his face serious as flipping a book. He turned serious and recounted that the prince had come to see him not long ago. Hearing that, Fiona was surprised. She stiffened and thought, "Sigrun came to see Aaron Clovis?" Then Fiona, partly puzzled and mostly curious, asked what he came for. Then Aaron Clovis told Fiona the whole story. "You know I'm researching Shadow, right? At that time, the prince said he wanted all information about Shadow." Fiona's heart skipped a beat. She was like struck by a second trick, her face blank like a stunned goose, shocked to the point of losing focus. Sigrun is seeking him out herself, maybe to harm him. He should stay away from her. Fiona helplessly grabbed her skirt tightly, still thinking, honestly, what exactly is he thinking? Seeing the atmosphere suddenly strangely silent, Aaron Clovis quietly turned and glanced at Fiona. Then under the blazing sun he continued, "But if I say it like this, I will suffer a loss, right? I made a deal with the prince to exchange information from me." Aaron Clovis told Fiona he wanted a piece of the dragon's heart that the prince had hunted before. Hearing that, Fiona was stunned and blankly asked, "The dragon's heart? Why do you need it, Earl?" Aaron Clovis smiled calmly at Fiona's question and lightly answered, "Yes." Then he explained to her, "It could be said to be the key to curing my illness. The disease will be completely cured if the causing the disease to spread all over the body to be removed. My case was the same, suddenly and unexpectedly." Aaron Clovis placed his hand on his heart. He was silent, then confided to Fiona, "My disease was infected from Shadow. So if I defeat that Shadow, I will be cured, right?" The dragon's heart is a pure catalyst that can enhance divine power. The image of a dark brown dragon heart like a cowpat appeared. Along with that was a sword stabbing straight into Shadow. Aaron Clovis's voice echoed again, "It will be the cure to eliminate Shadow." After hearing his explanation, Fiona curiously asked again with wide eyes and an open mouth, "But how do we find Shadow?" "Now the only way is to wait until it appears." Aaron Clovis's face remained calm. He calmly walked ahead of Fiona while speaking to her behind. During this time, research work with the Academy has also been progressing smoothly. We have found a way to track Shadow's traces. From one surprise to another, Fiona was shocked to the core. Frozen for 5 seconds, eyes wide, mouth agape, unable to believe her ears. But then Aaron Clovis said it is still just a theory and needs more testing. Fiona's face became thoughtful. Her eyebrows furrowed as she pondered if we could find Shadow first. Fiona clenched her hands tightly, her mind still restless, thinking that protecting Sigrun would also become easier. After hearing this, Fiona bowed politely and said to Aaron Clovis, "Thank you, my lord, for telling me this." Aaron Clovis turned to look at her, then smiled kindly like an angel, standing upright, and spoke to Fiona. "It's nothing. I have to report to my colleague Fiona, right?" Then Aaron Clovis chuckled softly and affectionately said, "Allow me to say this first." With Fiona's face blank like a stunned goose, not understanding what he was about to say, Aaron Clovis quickly said, "The prince came to see me, but not as a hero trying to defeat evil. Worried for the people in danger, the image of Sigrun cloaked in black came to meet Aaron Clovis. It made him feel the desire from Sigrun herself, the desire to protect whoever that prince cared for." Aaron Clovis thought that was Fiona. Fiona was still stunned, not expecting this. Aaron Clovis continued, "No one has the chance to interrupt. They will feel it, and others looking in will feel it too." Then Aaron Clovis politely bowed, speaking the last few words to Fiona before leaving. "This is just my personal opinion, but I hope it will be useful to you, so I will take my leave now." Fiona bowed politely to Aaron Clovis and did not forget to say thank you. "Thank you for taking the time to talk with me." My lord, under the warm weather with sunlight filtering through the leaves, Fiona's face remained troubled and gloomy as she walked and thought. Sigrun came to see Aaron Clovis. I felt uneasy, worried that he might have grown to hate me, because I have been hiding the truth all this time. But as I think and recall what Aaron Clovis said before he left, Fiona thought silently. If that is true, she made a sad and hurt expression. Then she continued to think that truly I am a coward even after waking up. Although recovered and able to move, I still don't want to get out of bed. After recovering, Fiona just sat still in one place on the bed without moving. She only sat there quietly, looking out the nearby window, fearing the reason Sigrun never visited her once was because he decided to push her away. Fiona was silent, unable to say a word, only thinking inside. He must hate me a lot, right, Sigrun? Because only after hearing your story did I have the courage to say sorry. In her mind, Fiona silently apologized to Sigrun for living so wrongly toward him. Her face showed regret. Fiona's eyes drooped but shimmered as if about to shed tears. Fiona continued thinking that being such a person, despite that, I still miss you very much, Sigrun. The image of Sigrun, smiling affectionately, appeared in Fiona's subconscious, recalling when she returned the engagement ring and the words he said then. Fiona always left first, and he was always the one chasing after her, making Fiona want to take the initiative to meet and apologize to Sigrun, the one who always followed her from behind. The sound of the horse carriage clapping. In Fiona's mind, she thought, I'm still afraid to face you. Then Fiona, with a determined face, opened the carriage door and stepped down, thinking to herself, but I want to protect you. Standing stunned like a statue in front of the castle door, Fiona silently affirmed, this time I will come to see you, so we can hold hands and walk side by side outside the huge, luxurious castle with piles of flowers. But each flower was wilted and pitiful to see. The branches kept rustling. The atmosphere here at dusk was both creepy and gave a chilling feeling. The wind blew fiercely. A flock of birds flapped their wings and flew off in one direction. The castle scene looked both lonely and mysterious. Frighteningly so, Fiona strode inside. She looked around while raising her head, thinking this was the mansion of Marquis Eric. Suddenly, she hesitated for a few seconds. With a few beads of sweat on her face, her eyes became cautious as she thought silently, but the mansion really was empty. Looking out at the endless hallway that seemed to have no end, Fiona wondered aloud. Even the servants assigned to protect the mansion were not here. Curious, she walked from one place to another, looking around every corner. Fiona wondered, since when did this place become so empty? Passing by the deck, she barely paid attention to the portrait of Marquis Eric on the wall. Fiona strode forward, thinking Sigrun came to a place like this to be alone, recalling the words of Marquis Aaron Clovis earlier, that recently traces of shadow were found at Marquis Eric's mansion. So the prince must have gone there. Fiona carefully walked while glancing around, silently agreeing that what Aaron Clovis said was true. The atmosphere inside the mansion was very unsettling. Suddenly Fiona turned and thought about some nonsense that was also scary. She was worried and asked herself about Sigrun. This atmosphere made her unable to stop thinking about scary things. What if she had come too late? Just thinking that was too fast, too dangerous. Fiona suddenly got scared. Her knees buckled. She froze. Her face darkened, eyes wide as if seeing a ghost. then ran away like the wind, flashing down the mansion hallway, running while thinking, "No, Sigrun." She ran a few steps, then stopped. Fiona turned sharply from one side to the other, wondering where he was. Then a slightly open door caught her attention. She quickly turned and stood stunned in front of the huge, towering door. In her mind, she kept silently begging, "Please." Suddenly, a hand grabbed the door handle from inside. Fiona outside was reaching out to open the door, then brought her hand closer to the door while telling herself, "If you're safe, then appear before me right now." As if by telepathy, Sigrun seemed to catch Fiona's Bluetooth signal. He flung the door wide open, leaving Fiona stunned and bewildered. Sigrun was so shocked he stiffened, eyes wide open with no pupils visible. Then Fiona was hit by the second move of Diao 3 Tien, lost for words, mouth open but no sound, just staring at Sigrun. Sigrun was equally stunned as Fiona, frozen for a few seconds, then grabbed one of her wrists and shouted anxiously, "Fiona, why are you here?" Then worried for her, Sigrun tightly held Fiona's hand and hesitated to say, "Your wound." While Sigrun kept asking about her health nonstop, Fiona's heart kept pounding wildly. Boom, like a drum beat, Sigrun's voice still echoed, asking if walking like this was okay. Suddenly, Fiona slightly opened her mouth as if about to say something. Unexpectedly, no one could predict this move from Fiona. She screamed and cried with tears streaming down like a waterfall. Seeing her cry, Sigrun was startled, not knowing how to react properly. Then suddenly, in front of Sigrun's worried face, Fiona grabbed his hand and shouted, "And you? Why has no one been able to contact you all this time?" Sigrun still didn't understand what she meant when Fiona fired off a barrage. "You've been wandering around without anyone escorting you. I worried about you so much." Seeing Fiona cry with her eyes tightly shut, Sigrun hesitated for a few seconds, thinking about something, then suddenly raised his hand to gently wipe Fiona's tears and said, "Let's leave here first." Sunlight streamed through the window slats. Fiona and Sigrun stood facing each other in the hallway. Fiona still worried about Sigrun's health. She kept holding both of his hands tightly, then asked again to be sure if he was injured anywhere, like a mother caring for her child. Fiona worried so much that her eyebrows drooped completely as she bent over to observe him from front to back, still asking if Shadow had approached him, but ignoring all her concerns outside. Sigrun said to Fiona. Then suddenly he grabbed her upper arms and pressed his face close. Fiona still answered seriously, "Nothing's wrong, calm down." His serious attitude made Fiona suddenly freeze. After a few seconds, Sigrun said he saw she was too worried. Fiona was caught off guard and still hadn't recovered. Her face still looked like a stunned goose. Then Sigrun calmed down and casually replied that he was fine, though Sigrun said that his hand still tightly held Fiona's upper arms. Hearing him say that, Fiona breathed a sigh of relief, as if a 100-ton burden had just lifted. Fiona squeezed his hands and said, "Luckily, I was afraid I'd lose you." Then her hands fell on Sigrun's chest. Fiona helplessly bowed her head and said, "You don't know how scared I was." After saying that, Fiona gently leaned her head on Sigrun's chest, while Sigrun kept murmuring continuously, "During the time I was bedridden, I never met you once. I missed you so much that as soon as I recovered, I went looking for you. But the doctor said you weren't there. Marquise and Clovis said you suddenly went looking for Shadow's whereabouts." At that time, Fiona bowed her head against Sigrun, her hands still tightly held, but her mouth kept running at full speed. Fiona continued saying, "You went alone into this dangerous mansion." And by then Fiona had turned into baby 3. Before she knew it, her eyes welled up, just waiting to burst into tears. Still teary-eyed, she kept rapping, "I was scared something would happen to you. I was so scared, nothing was surprising." Fiona suddenly burst into sobbing tears. Crying and shouting, she said, "I haven't even been able to properly apologize to you about last time. Maybe you didn't want to see me, but I couldn't be at peace until I could see you directly." Then, to end this long speech, Fiona tightly grabbed Sigrun's shirt, then relieved, finished the last sentence. "Luckily, you're still okay," Sigrun, hearing Fiona rap that sad verse. Then his face naturally darkened, eyebrows furrowed, showing sadness. Suddenly, he gently reached out, placing his hand on Fiona's shoulder and said, "Fiona, we've known each other for a long time now." Fiona was comforted by Sigrun's gentle back rub and affectionately replied with a simple yes. Sigrun continued saying so. He once thought he understood her very well, but now he wasn't sure if he truly understood her. Recalling all of Fiona's smiling images, Sigrun confided quietly to her. He didn't know if the feelings of someone who knew everything from the start like her were completely genuine to him. Suddenly the atmosphere around Sigrun became gloomy, as if completely covered by shadow. Sigrun took on a sorrowful tone and continued saying he was also afraid everything had been planned in advance. Suddenly hesitated for a few seconds, but then resumed, confiding to Fiona. But actually, you're the one worried about losing me. Recalling Fiona's worried and dazed face earlier, Sigrun said, and also the one who raised her voice at him because she cared for him. He thought she couldn't be acting. At that moment, Sigrun was shocked, eyes wide open. He confessed to her that at least now Sigrun knew Fiona had feelings for him. The sound of his heart pounding wildly. Sigrun's face, red like a ripe tomato, hugged Fiona, gently stroked her hair, and said he also felt her love. Until Sigrun finished confiding, Fiona was still sobbing, her eyes still teary, but her face blushed shyly like a teenage girl. Sigrun's hand stroked her hair, lightly touching the nape of Fiona's neck. His voice asked how she felt. Was that right? Suddenly, Sigrun gently pulled away from Fiona. Face to face, he said to her, "Tell me, Fiona, do you love me?" Hearing that, Fiona froze for 5 seconds, then tears streamed down like a waterfall, her small mouth slightly open to answer, "I love you. Even when the stories that made you were all written by me, and even when I understand you better than any AI, because I'm the one who created this world." Suddenly, mid-sentence, Fiona became serious, her face unexpectedly resolute. Fiona looked straight at Sigrun and said, "I swear not a single moment of the times we've been together was deliberately arranged by me." In front of Sigrun's shy face about to burst from being confessed to, Fiona still stood swearing non-stop. "I swear on my heart I will forever love only you, Sigrun. I was afraid you would leave me when you found out. That's why I didn't dare to say anything. I'm sorry." Then Fiona burst into tears in front of Sigrun's darkened face. Feeling sorry for Sigrun grabbed Sigrun's shirt tightly and rested her head on his chest, saying, "Please forgive me. I love you so much." Hearing that was sickening, Sigrun stopped Fiona's words. He said, "That's enough. If your love for me is true, I can forgive you as many times as needed." Fiona said something so cheesy it gave Sigrun goosebumps. He gently kissed Fiona's forehead as tears streamed down her face while the sky began to darken. The sun had set behind the rows of trees outside the castle. A luxurious carriage stood unattended. Inside the room, Fiona's faint voice calling Sigrun could be heard. Sigrun sat on the bed while Fiona sat on his lap. They looked very intimate. Fiona sat proudly on his lap and smiled brightly, asking, "Thinking back, you hurriedly ran out of that basement, right?" Hearing Fiona ask, Sigrun suddenly realized what she wanted to know. He calmly and coldly replied, "Yes, that's right." Then, with her usual curiosity, Fiona asked him, "What did you see there?" Sigrun quickly answered without hesitation, "I saw the condemned prisoners who should have been locked up in the dungeon." Hearing Sigrun's words, Fiona was startled and screamed, "What? Why were they at Marquis Eric's mansion?" Sigrun just replied briefly, "I don't know." Recalling the scene of standing frozen before a pile of people lying on the floor, Sigrun recounted exactly to Fiona when he entered. All of them had already collapsed onto the floor. Fiona quickly asked, "Were they dead?" Remembering when Sigrun approached, he bent down to look at them, and they looked gaunt as if they hadn't eaten for a year. He told Fiona it wasn't death, but more like their souls had been pulled out of their bodies. Hearing Sigrun's story, Fiona suddenly became silent, as if contemplating something. She recalled the image of her own soul entity she met before and thought silently about souls being pulled out of bodies. That means, given the current situation, it's highly likely that Shadow absorbed their souls. Suddenly, without warning, Sigrun pressed his face close to Fiona's and calmly said, "But I'm not sure, so I plan to ask Marquis Arend Clovis." Hearing this, innocent as a fawn, Fiona replied briefly, "Then I'll go with you." Seeing her say that, Sigrun, partly indulging and partly teasing, smiled. Then he suddenly looked absent-mindedly to one side and said to Fiona, "Besides this, we also need to find witnesses to the prince's crimes. Otherwise, that bastard, pretending to be a hero, will continue his act." The sly face of Crown Prince Enoch, with his trademark sneer, appeared disgusting before Fiona's thoughtful face. Sigrun hurriedly said, "We can't delay any longer." Outside the window, the sky had turned the pink of dusk. Inside the room, Fiona's voice still echoed. She said regarding the prince, there was someone she could ask for help. The flame from the torch hanging on the wall crackled. Fiona stood frozen in front of the iron prison door and called out, "Carl." Inside, Carl was still curled up, looking as cowardly as ever. Suddenly, hearing the call, he turned around. Carl's eyes widened in surprise, his mouth slightly open as he mumbled, "Miss, 2 people, 2 extremes. One was chained tightly, unable to move behind the cold iron bars of the prison. The other leisurely held an oil lamp outside. Carl inside asked Fiona, "Have you decided on my punishment yet?" Fiona calmly replied, "Not yet." Her face remained composed, with a hint of pensiveness as she listened to Carl's feelings. Carl inside kept nagging nonstop. So what? His face suddenly darkened like a mangy dog, his eyebrows furrowed tightly as he said, "It's ridiculous to say this now, but the meaning of my life is just to avenge my mother." Carl's voice echoed along with the image of his gentle self when he had long hair and held a cup lightly. He said no matter what dangerous situation he faced, for revenge, he could sacrifice his life. Inside, Carl kept nagging nonstop, so why did his face suddenly turn pale like a sick dog, his eyebrows furrowed tightly as he spoke? "Now, saying this is really ridiculous, but the meaning of my life is only to take revenge for my mother," Carl's voice still echoed along with the image of Carl, his gentle self with long hair, lightly holding the cup. He said that no matter what dangerous situation he faced, for revenge, he could sacrifice his own life. So when thinking that she was the target of revenge, although Carl's words still echoed in her ears, at this moment in her mind, Fiona silently thought, when Carl said his last words to her, "I couldn't remember anything we had ever been through together," Fiona was sure he was feeling regret for stabbing her. Suddenly, Fiona opened her mouth to speak to Carl, standing frozen in front of the prison gate. "Carl, I don't know how you will feel when you hear this, but if there is anyone who can kill so coldly like that," Fiona said about murder so calmly, "cold as the Ice Queen," she continued, "I would chase that person to the depths of hell and kill them." In front of Carl's hollow face and gloomy, lost eyes, Fiona still stood outside and said, "From the beginning, I provoked you that your enemy was me, wasn't I?" When Carl turned to look at Fiona with a zombie-like face, she was holding an oil lamp to light the way and spoke to him. "So, I don't want to blame you much for stabbing me. From the start, you didn't intend to kill me, right?" Before Fiona's touching motherly compassion, Carl was momentarily speechless, but then returned to silence. "Feeling hopeless," he said. "Even so, the fact that I stabbed you doesn't change. I won't defend myself anymore." Then, in the faint light lit like a torch on the wall, Carl finally spoke up. He said, "Miss, may I ask one last question about what happened between His Highness the Prince and me?" Before Fiona's stunned and stiff face, Carl's voice suddenly echoed in the dark room, telling Fiona that it was all because of her. Then Carl looked back at Fiona with a face 3 parts pity, 7 parts bitterness, and asked with a hateful gaze if she did it on purpose. Knowing it was time to stop lying and boasting, Fiona's eyes slightly lowered as she thought to herself, this is the time I have to be responsible and honest." Then Fiona straightforwardly answered with a reply Carl did not expect. He paused, frozen for 5 seconds after hearing that shocking sentence. Then Fiona closed her eyes tightly and lightly clenched one hand over her chest as if trying to convey all her feelings. She said, "But even if I didn't do it on purpose, the fact that the two of you ended up like this is still my fault." Then Fiona's face darkened, tears welling up as she shouted loudly, "So I have always tried to fix all my mistakes, and I will continue to try my best." Then, before Carl's pained face inside the dark prison, Fiona gently said, "So Carl, although it will be difficult, I need your help." Fiona spoke while lightly touching the prison door bars, her face outside, showing both sorrow and pleading. Now Fiona's hand gripped a bar as she quietly and gently asked Carl, "Can you stay by my side and witness me fixing my mistakes? Please help me fix them when I'm wrong. Is that okay?" Before Carl's stunned and shocked face, Fiona kept rambling outside without stopping. "I want to apologize to you that way." Carl's dumbfounded face couldn't believe his ears, his eyes wide and eyebrows furrowed. Then Carl dazedly asked, "Is that okay?" Fiona knelt down and placed the candle on the ground, then calmly replied, "I will release you. No one would dare say anything." Seeing Fiona standing blankly in front of the prison door, the lock clanked open. Carl, still shocked, asked, "If I stab you again, what will you do?" The key kept clanking. Fiona heard the question and smiled brightly. Gripping the prison bars calmly, she answered, "Seeing you ask that question, you probably won't stab me a second time." Carl's face darkened as soon as he finished speaking, not knowing how to react. 3 parts helpless, 7 parts like a BA reply. There really was no other way with her. Then in the following days, Fiona, Sigrun, and Carl, the 3 of them held documents and discussed together. They searched for witnesses who could testify to the truth. There were many people, Like Ito, many letters were written and stacked to prove that the monster attacks on the villages were entirely the Crown Prince's conspiracy. They needed to gather enough people to speak up to stop the Crown Prince. Seeing the image of the Crown Prince, caught and looking pale and terrified, they had to do their best. So gathering more witnesses would be more beneficial. But suddenly, not understanding what happened, Fiona was startled, slapped her purse on the table, stood up, and shouted loudly, "All Carl's witnesses have disappeared." Fiona said to Carl as she gradually regained composure and asked seriously, "Has it been determined whether they are alive or dead yet?" Carl quickly replied that Fiona's body has not been found yet, and at this moment, she could no longer stay calm. Her face became worried. Fiona raised her hand to her forehead and muttered a curse. Damn it! The Crown Prince must have kidnapped Carl, the witness. But that idiot couldn't have done it alone. He definitely has accomplices. The image of the Crown Prince's face appeared. The mocking smile reappeared, but beside him were at least two mysterious accomplices. Then Fiona's expression darkened as she put her hand over her mouth, thinking. She was both pensive and muttering, reasoning that perhaps they were nobles, hoping the Crown Prince would ascend the throne next. There were two prominent families supporting him. As soon as she finished speaking, Fiona immediately listed them, the Duke Irath and the Marquis Irath. After hearing this, Carl stood rooted to the spot while Sigrun crossed her arms beside Fiona. Meanwhile, she sat comfortably on the chair, her attitude still calm. He casually extended his hand and said, "Marquis Eric, to be precise, he is the supporter of Queen Duchess Annette." Then the importance of ideology and bloodline came up. Suddenly, as if realizing something, Fiona widened her eyes and stared at Sigrun. Then she thought silently, "Ah, right. That's why Sigrun also hates him. Blue sky, white clouds, golden sunshine." Inside the room, Sigrun and Fiona discussed the Crown Prince's matter back and forth, Fiona's voice faintly heard. She roughly said, "We have narrowed down the suspects, but sitting here and just talking is useless." Inside the room, Fiona gestured wildly while seriously saying, "We can't just rely on these suspicions to control the Duke and Marquis." Exhausted, Fiona was 30% helpless and 70% frustrated, putting her hand to her forehead. Her tired, complaining tone said, "How can we find evidence?" Carl, standing in front of her, also put his hand on his chin, deep in thought. Then suddenly Carl spoke, causing Sigrun and Fiona to stare at him. He said, "If it's about that..." But before finishing, Carl hesitated and stopped midway. Smiling slyly, he asked Fiona back, "Isn't there someone very suitable for this task beside the young lady?" The sound of hurried footsteps echoed non-stop. Suddenly, someone pushed the door open, making Duke Ernest, who was sitting inside drinking tea, startled and jerking back. Suddenly, he froze. His face darkened, eyes wide with panic, as if seeing a ghost, teeth clenched. The voice of Duke Abenhallo from the north rang out, "My lord, long time no see, Duke Ernest," as Aben approached. Duke Ernest shouted, "What is this rudeness?" Aben approached calmly, as if nothing had happened, his face smiling handsomely and charmingly. Meanwhile, Duke Ernest was furious, shouting loudly. Abenhallo's voice rang out with surprise. "Abenhallo!" Ernest retorted sarcastically. "Suddenly showing up without notice, is that how people from the north show their manners?" He was angry, his tone irritable. The lord flung the door open rudely like that. Ernest didn't expect it. There should have been guards at the door. He was angry and took it out on those outside. Aben noticed the tension in the other's eyes and asked, "What the hell have they done?" It seemed there was a secret meeting here. His gaze glanced at the young lady with golden, flowing hair like the evening sun. Her sparkling eyes reflecting intelligence and calmness. He immediately recognized that she was Sigrun's half-sister. He stepped in front of the blonde girl, placed his hand on his chest, and bowed respectfully. His voice sincere. "It seems a guest arrived before me, Aben." "Sorry," he apologized politely. "Please forgive me, Your Highness Princess." He explained his excuse. "I heard the Duke was receiving guests, but I didn't know it was Your Highness Princess Arya." She looked up and smiled brightly like a flower. "I didn't expect you two to be so close that you could skip formal introductions." Aben smiled gently and replied, "Your Highness Princess, that's right. Today I also came to confide in you." Ernest stood aside, watching the scene, grinding his teeth in anger. His face flushed with rage. He expressed his feelings. "What kind of rude northerner are you? You say my bad reputation spread just because of me?" He laughed heartily, not missing the chance to tease. "So surely this Duke is the one who spread that rumor, huh?" Arya gently withdrew from the conversation. I'll leave first. Before leaving, she also wished the two of them that their conversation would end well. Suddenly, Aben spoke up. He remained in the same position without turning his head. Please forgive me, Your Highness. The princess paused slightly upon hearing this. Aben continued, probing. I'm very curious about what Your Highness discussed with the Duke. Ernest. She turned around and looked, her lips slightly curled up. Arya softly replied, perhaps that will be what I'm about to discuss. The matter with the Duke. Hearing this, he was quite surprised. A thought echoed in Aben's mind. It seemed the princess had already begun to implement a strategy for the next emperor's position. In his mind appeared the image of that princess holding a chess piece, carefully calculating the next move. However, if she was a princess, not born out of wedlock, then the next image was of the stern Duke, his brows furrowed. Then a person who follows the bloodline doctrine like Duke Ernest would likely have no complaints. He silently admired. This princess is truly talented. Ernest stepped closer to Aben, raising a finger to the white-haired Duke's face. Hello, I officially oppose this. He exhaled and calmly replied, you may do as you wish, but please get to the main point. Aben turned to look straight into his eyes. I'm not good at beating around the bush, his deep voice sounded, so I'll be straightforward. He looked Ernest directly, speaking with hidden meaning. Recently, haven't you and our respected crown prince dealt with a few people? Where are their bodies? Have they all been burned? Seeing this, Ernest frowned and snapped back angrily. With a scowling face, Ernest questioned Aben sharply. A malicious glint flashed in his eyes. Is the Duke sane? Yet he remained unshaken by the sharp words. Oh, you don't know? He shouted angrily. How can you say that? I completely don't understand your intentions. Aben carefully observed Anis's reaction, as if afraid to miss any important expression. A thought flashed through Aben's mind. Judging by the reaction, it seemed he really didn't know. Suddenly, a question arose in his mind. Then who exactly is the accomplice in this? Recalling the previous conversation, a gentle hand lifted a teacup, and a cautious voice from across said, perhaps we should stop using magical beasts to attack Carl. The saying the night has eyes means sooner or later you'll meet a ghost. The scene was fully revealed. Inside a dark room, 3 men were hatching some plot. Count Curtis voiced his opinion. Now we should create a more dramatic situation. Enoch also agreed. Regarding that, I have an idea. He glanced at Eric, probing the other party. You won't deviate midway like Duke Ernest, right? Of course not, said the voice with a hint of threat. Marquis Eric was startled when his name was mentioned. Enoch gently reminded, don't forget the creature that all humans fear. His words sounded gentle but made others tremble. Is it standing with us? Eric clenched his fist tightly and quietly replied, yes, Your Highness. Scene changes to the sound of wagon wheels rolling on a cobblestone road. The sound of 6 horses' hooves echoed in the silent space inside the carriage. Fiona, with snow-white hair and deep red eyes, was resting her chin on her hand, gazing silently out the window, lost in thought. It wasn't Duke Ernest in her mind. Her father's conversation echoed. When her father asked, he answered as if knowing nothing. Judging by his lying manner, he probably really didn't know. She saw his embarrassed expression when questioned by his father about why he had a private meeting with the princess. Fiona silently analyzed and pieced together the events. It seemed he had switched from the crown prince's side to the princess's side. After ruling out other possibilities, she was almost certain. Then only Marquis Eric remained. Fiona confirmed this by intuition and small details. Only he was left, but then another vague and persistent doubt arose. What about the prisoners found in the basement? Are they related to the crown prince? The carriage slowly stopped, but she still hadn't escaped her thoughts. How to get the decisive evidence? A polite voice sounded, pulling Fiona out of her inner maze. We have arrived, miss. She looked up to see an orphanage before her as the gate opened. 2 girls, Eunice and Libya, smiled as they stepped out to greet Miss Fiona. Eunice gave a gentle smile. Fortunately, she still looked healthy as usual. Fiona stepped down from the car and held Eunice's hand, her eyes shining with friendliness. A gentle voice echoed in the peaceful atmosphere. It's been a while, Miss Eunice. Miss Libya, you arrived early. Behind Libya, standing close with blonde hair, smiled warmly and happily replied, just right. My morning schedule was free, so I came early to help out. The orphanage was located in a corner of the capital in a small courtyard of the orphanage. Eunice comfortably played with little Carl. The children's laughter echoed everywhere, filling the space with vitality. Fiona, with white hair, quietly observed, She heard that Eunice had directly participated in managing this place. This was very rare for a noble lady. After playing for a while, the three of them strolled together, chatting lively. She spoke up to express thanks, her voice carrying sincere gratitude. "Thank you for inviting me here. I thought I had nothing to do with charity work." Eunice smiled in response. She did not forget to express gratitude for the care and companionship of the two. "I'm really glad you two are willing to help." Walking, Fiona was lost in thought. Something was still unclear these past few days. Suddenly, her vigilance towards those around her heightened. It was as if everything was correct but still missing the final piece. For a moment, she felt vague, wondering if it was because of her. Conflicts with Duke Ernest? A silent glimmer passed through her eyes but found no clue. Since she had received an invitation from Eunice, she came here. Fiona felt a bit more at ease, temporarily changing the atmosphere. Because if she focused too much on one matter, her mind would become rigid. Suddenly, a tiny foot approached. It was an adorable little girl. She looked up and asked, "Are you Fiona?" She was a bit surprised the girl recognized her. "I'm Fiona." She bent down to look at the girl, thinking to herself that once recognized, she could never go back. The little girl smiled and told Fiona her name, then held her small hand tightly. Fiona held the girl's hand as they walked and talked. "I want to become a strong mage like you," the girl said. Fiona asked, "Really? So when you become a mage, what do you want to do?" She looked down, waiting for an answer. The girl's face darkened. "I will find my parents who abandoned me and take revenge." Fiona was silent, unsure what to say. She pondered, having met her again at the orphanage. She could somewhat guess. Fiona felt a little sad inside. But in the end, everything still turned out that way. "Why?" She paused. The girl looked up with confused eyes, staring at Fiona. "Yes." She knelt down, wrapping her hands around the girl's small hands, sincerely advising, "Revenge is not bad, but be careful not to let that anger control your whole life." She sincerely counseled, "Put your happiness first." Fiona stood up and stroked the girl's short hair. "Don't waste your intelligence and time on those who abandoned you." She clarified the matter for the girl to understand. "Isn't that a bit regrettable?" Fiona asked. The girl was silent for a moment, then softly said, I think you're right." Eunice watched the two from afar. Eunice smiled happily, seeing the harmony in their souls. The scene shifted to a sunlit room where the three, Fiona, Eunice, and Libya, were chatting. Eunice asked about earlier. "I saw you were close with Lies quickly, Miss Fiona." She gently replied, "Maybe I met her once before." Eunice was silent, recalling the image of Lies playing happily. Then she softly announced, "Lies is about to be adopted by a new family." Fiona happily said, "Oh, that's wonderful." But something made Eunice feel uneasy and worried. "There's one thing I'm concerned about." She immediately asked, "What's the problem?" Eunice whispered, "There's a noble society that arranges the adoption of commoner children." Eunice's voice grew heavier. "But rumors say that the children adopted by nobles from that society are gradually losing contact." Eunice revealed the issue that worried her most. "I heard the noble who is going to adopt Lies also belongs to that society." Fiona was quite surprised to hear the story. "I heard that the noble who is about to adopt Lies is also part of that group." Fiona was quite surprised to hear the story. She didn't know what to say. Eunice sadly placed both hands on her chest. "I was very worried. The rays of sunlight shining through the window danced on the piano keys. If so," Libya raised her hand to her chin and voiced her opinion. "Let's try directly joining that noble group and see." In short, the group of three people, including Eunice, Fiona, and Libya, decided to infiltrate the noble society. Following Libya's suggestion, they sat and discussed for a long time to find a way. However, since this is a secret society not publicly disclosed, they could not approach it through the usual upper-class channels. Therefore, the group of three decided to return to the mansion to find another way. Scene shifts to a magnificent mansion. Sigrun and Fiona stand side by side on the balcony, the atmosphere silent as if time is suspended between them. He seriously asked in a deep, warm voice, eyes never leaving her, "So, you intend to join that noble society, SAO?" Fiona looked up at him, her eyes briefly hesitant, then softly replied, and lowered her head. "The loss of contact with the adopted children is really suspicious. You have to personally investigate," he said. Fiona's voice was slow as if pouring out her heart. "I'm also worried about Lays." Then she looked at him with a slightly puzzled expression. Fiona sighed softly. Memories suddenly flooded her mind, showing the image of an innocent child with a bright smile and eyes full of hope. It was the child she had met in front of the mansion, the image of a couple waving to everyone. Her parents had been caught up in Bill's scam. Curtis was silent for a moment, his gaze distant. I see. Fiona quietly lowered her eyes to the balcony below, her eyes deep in thought. I promised to try to help her mother come home, but in the end I met her again at the orphanage. Fiona hesitated. Her voice sounded light, as if stuck in her throat. Do you know what she said to you when you two met again? She took a deep breath and continued. She said she wanted revenge on the parents who abandoned her. Fiona trembled as she continued, speaking both to him and to herself. Hearing words like that, how could I abandon her? She placed her hand on her chest, as if feeling every heartbeat. Fiona opened her eyes wide, looking straight at him, filled with determination. If there's anything I can do to help, I want to help. Then she intently looked at his resolute face, but still said nothing. He silently took Fiona's hand, strong and warm. Fiona slowly bowed her head, his eyes full of understanding and encouragement. Then, I will help too. Their hands intertwined tightly as a connection. Nothing can separate us. Fiona was moved looking at him, but still had some worries in her heart. Sigrun said, Thank you for wanting to help me, but just tracking Marquis Eric is already busy enough. Is this okay? He looked down at the tightly held hands, then gently cherished them as if they were the most precious thing in the world. When you were dying on the cold battlefield, you reached out your warm hand. Sigrun's eyes searched for her. Although it could be said that his unhappy beginnings stemmed from Fiona, his deep, warm voice full of affection said, But you were the one who saved my life, he asked her tenderly. This time, you want to save the child named Lace. Just like how you tried your best to take responsibility for me, right? Fiona hugged the baby tightly. Gentle light enveloped the two like a symbol of life, and hope being reborn. Suddenly, Sigrun's expression changed rapidly. He smiled teasingly. Although from his perspective, having another rival made him somewhat uncomfortable, making Fiona blush, embarrassed and stammering. No, SAO, he said again. But then he became serious. Anyway, seeing this process firsthand, I finally understand. His gaze was so deep she couldn't understand what he was thinking or what he realized. Sigrun bent down and gently kissed her forehead, his voice soft, whispering unpredictable words. The reason why, even knowing all the truth about you, I still can't help but love you. He leaned on her, because Sigrun felt their breaths mingling, sincere and respectful hearts, in all her words and actions, making Fiona embarrassed, wondering if she was dreaming. How could he? Fiona looked at the man's face before her, unshaken by any storm. Her heart tightened at that gentleness, that he only looked straight at her. Fiona raised her slender hand to caress his cheek. He loved her too. His focused gaze couldn't look away, no less than she loved him. She wanted to say something. Sigrun took Fiona's hand, holding it tightly against his face, as if wanting to feel her presence more clearly. When stabbed and fell, I dreamed a dream where you listened to Fiona telling her story, hesitating and changing her words halfway. No, that was Fiona's warning. Shadow disguised as a dream. Fiona looked up. Her voice was gentle but full of warning. Fiona Shadow was trying to harm you. Sigrun made a fleeting judgment. You? What? Fiona was silent for a moment. It seemed like she wanted to make me the most miserable person in the world. She lowered her eyes as if guessing something, then gently caressed his hand. That's why she wanted to take him away. Her bright eyes looked straight at Sigrun. She whispered, Because you are the most important person to me. Fiona sensed something very different, unnamed but intense. It seemed Shadow also realized that. She decided to say what was troubling her. She wanted to take away you, the most important person in my life, and hoped I would become devastated. Although imagining myself collapsing, Sigrun worried, his voice louder than usual. Fiona, what? Now you tell me. Fiona hurriedly held his hand to calm him with a gentle smile, but Sigrun looked at her intently, seemingly not wanting to miss any expression on Fiona's face. Now, whether you collapse or not no longer matters. She paused, then continued. Your disappearance and no longer being by my side, Fiona wrapped her arms tightly around his neck, was scarier to me than death. She silently rested her head on Sigrun's shoulder. After a while, Fiona gently spoke. So, maybe to protect you, I can hesitate to do things you hate. Rain began to fall outside the window, each drop pattering as if blending into the heartbeat of two hearts. Sigrun suddenly lifted her up. If so, then Fiona. He turned and stepped inside. Their eyes met. Do whatever you want. Sigrun stepped firmly. Just like you. If I lose you, then I will lose all the most precious things in my life. Gently placing Fiona down on the bed. In this life, for me, nothing will remain. Her eyes full of affection, his hand tightly grasped Fiona, Sigrun bent down, his large hand holding her waist, wanting to cherish what he had before him. Perhaps he had received the greatest salvation from the girl who might have destroyed his life. And then both sank into a long kiss. Sigrun. He didn't know if this feeling was true love. Both kissed passionately and emotionally. It was affection. By habit. Her hand grabbed his shirt tightly, out of reflex or obsessive madness. The two stopped and looked at each other, eyes full of love despite all that had been told. Sigrun continued to bend down and kiss Fiona. In his heart, he decided that time no longer mattered. Both immersed in the kiss, Sigrun seemed to tell himself that the important thing was that she once again was by his side, his eyes slightly open to look at his girl, wanting to completely immerse in the truth that she, the one who had slipped from his hands many times but returned, was now in his tight embrace. Sigrun tightly held Fiona's slender hand, wanting to dig deeper. To be further confirmed, he softly called Fiona. After a moment she spoke. Sigrun gently kissed Fiona's hand, softly begging. She promised him that from now on she would not leave him again. Come on. He looked up at her. Fiona didn't know how to answer yet. Then he continued. Because you saved me. So, you have to take responsibility until the end, okay? She put her small hand in his. Fiona gently kissed and softly replied. Her face still flushed. I will try my best. Outside the mansion, the drizzle had started falling without anyone noticing, soaking the atmosphere outside. The rain tapping on the window was too gentle, their hands tightly held so those sounds couldn't reach or soothe the atmosphere in the room. Fiona's feet unconsciously curled into the bedsheet. Fiona buried her face in his shoulder. Whispering to Sigrun, she held him tightly, encouraging him not to hesitate. She hugged him tightly, comforting. I'm okay. Fiona leaned on his shoulder. The matter between us, Sigrun widened his eyes upon hearing this. From now on, don't hesitate anymore, Fiona advised. Just do what your team suggests. Under the starry night sky, a magnificent mansion shone brightly. Fiona sat on the bed wearing a thin cloak. Her gentle eyes looked toward her man. He carefully told her not to let his father discover the hesitation sitting on the balcony railing, eyes unwilling to leave her. Seeing that Fiona sternly reminded, Go now, her firm words hiding concern. Hearing that, he looked slightly sad, his voice fading. See you again. His demeanor made Fiona involuntarily smile. Scene change. Libya entered holding a closed umbrella. I have investigated more about the group we talked about last time. She began to recount what she had found out. The group is run systematically. Libya's tone gradually deepened as she spoke about the group leader arranging the adoption of commoner children, and only nobles who registered as members could adopt children. From what she found out, Libya concluded that, as we predicted, this group operates very secretly. Everyone listened attentively. It's very difficult to approach them by normal methods, because they are very cautious. Hearing this, Fiona covered her mouth. What to do? Her eyes briefly heavy with worry. What should we do? If we attack now, we'll miss the key figures. She lowered her head to think. And they will quietly reorganize the two groups under another form, then thoughtfully asked Libya if there was a sure way to get into that group. Libya immediately answered the question. This charity group is increasing its members through Carl, a noble in the group, using his authority to invite others. She paused a bit, her eyes briefly contemplative, then continued. They are very closed off to outsiders. Fiona and Eunice widened their eyes hearing this. We must also receive an invitation letter from them to participate. Fiona's red eyes flickered with a glimmer of light as if calculating something. Speaking of invitation letters, she slowly said so. Fiona happily proposed an idea, confidently as if she had just discovered something great. Or we create a situation that forces them to send us an invitation letter. Eunice was stunned, mouth agape in disbelief at what she just heard. What? Can we do that, miss? She crossed her arms, smiling contentedly, her eyes shining with pride. Libya next to her also chuckled softly. Fiona confidently affirmed, Trust me. Scene changes to another light-filled room. A group of people sat dumbfounded, each face looking blank as if unable to digest the information just heard. Opposite Fiona, she sat comfortably, legs crossed, smiling fiercely as if she had just uncovered a great secret. The great leader of the Ginto World Group asked suspiciously, What did you just say? Ginto the Dragon King couldn't believe it. You're joking, right? Fiona Halo kept a calm face. No, I'm serious, Gwento frowned. I honestly hope you're not serious. The people behind him just doubted their lives. What did we just hear? She replied without worry. Have you ever seen the Halo air joke when making a request? Sorry, but this is a great plan. Fiona stood up, stepped close to him, pressed her face near his. Since you're free anyway. Her red eyes stared fiercely at Ginto the Dragon King, making him jump, heart almost falling out. I hope you accept at all costs. Now Gwento bowed, embarrassed. You're pushing me too hard. After a few seconds of hesitation, he gritted his teeth and nodded in agreement, though still full of worry. So what's the plan's name? The secret plan named Let Me Help You. In a large forest, a luxurious carriage clattered along a trail. Inside the bushes, a few whispers sounded vaguely. There. Someone was plotting, go block the road. The coachman still leisurely guided the horses, unaware of the lurking danger. Suddenly, a figure in a black cloak appeared in the middle of the road. The coachman stopped, shouted loudly, Hey, stand aside! Why block the road? But the figure stood still without reaction. The coachman was annoyed, shouted louder, Hey, can you hear me? The carriage needs to pass. At this moment, the black-cloaked figure stomped once like a family crest. Immediately, a group wearing black cloaks rushed out from the bushes. Carl's men attacked the group, surrounding the carriage. The coachman stared wide-eyed. What is this? Before he could react, two men approached. The coachman could only shout in vain, Get away! Carl, do you know who's inside the carriage? They laughed mockingly. If you know, then hand over all the valuables. Step 1 of the plan. Hire some mercenaries to fake a noble's carriage robbery. Step 1. Gwento sat thoughtfully, pretending to attack the noble's carriage in the group. Next, step 2. Inside the carriage, a noblewoman panicked, asking her husband, What's all the noise about? The man turned pale, looked outside, then immediately closed the curtains tightly. It seems like the robbers are attacking both of them. Trembling and crying out, hoping for a miracle to save them. Oh my God, what should we do? We don't have bodyguards. Just as the fake robbers were about to approach, Fiona was hiding in the bushes, preparing to leave. When she realized the noble was in danger, a fierce flame flared up from afar. She appeared in a dignified manner. Holding a blazing flame, Fiona stepped forward with an authoritative tone, daring to rob in broad daylight. Carl was really bold. In the plan, she would suddenly appear and save them. Seeing Fiona, Wantu recognized her in the carriage. The nobleman carefully pulled the curtain aside, eyes sparkling with hope. Oh, this person is Miss Halo Fiona. The flame in her hand blazed brightly. It's best for Carl to stay away from the carriage. When I was still speaking gently like this, she thought to herself, I will be gentle enough. A fake robber rushed forward, but Fiona skillfully used the flame to knock him down. They froze for 5 seconds. She started feeling like she was overacting. She wondered if Hungmin was a bit too rough, but since she had started acting, she couldn't stop. No matter what, she had to keep going. Fiona smirked and spoke challengingly. Next, above Carl's head, those fake robbers panicked. Enough acting, let's run. Then they called each other to retreat as planned. Retreat! The monster appeared! Fiona was called that way and got angry. What monster? Where do you think you're running? But suddenly, a strange feeling rose within her. Hey! Fiona heard strange noises and movements around. She wondered if there were still mercenaries here. Just then a pair of legs stepped out, accompanied by a sinister laugh. Hee! The person greeted. The guests have arrived. A group of real robbers appeared, weapons gleaming in their hands. Sorry, but that carriage is the mosquito we've been targeting. Fiona and the fake robbers suddenly froze. Unexpectedly, the situation was beyond prediction. There were real robbers here too. What? Why is this happening? One real robber pressed a spear against the carriage door. I deliberately hired mercenaries to pretend to be robbers. She fell into deep thought, realizing it was unnecessary after all. Inside the carriage, the noble couple hugged each other, trembling like leaves. Fiona shouted a warning, Please don't get out of the carriage! The noble couple immediately cooperated. Yes, they pleaded tearfully. Please help us. Miss Halo. Now Gwento stood nearby observing the situation. Finally he drew his sword. It's come to this. Steel flashed. Gwento shouted loudly, This is our territory. He threatened the real robbers. We won't give it up easily. Everyone take up arms and teach these scoundrels some manners. Fiona was briefly flustered, but quickly grasped the situation. Well then, no need to hold back my strength anymore. She widened her eyes, thinking so. Meanwhile, the noble couple still hugged each other, trembling inside the carriage, unaware of what was happening. In the end, they couldn't tell who the real villains were. After a chaotic fight, Fiona's group and the fake mercenaries coordinated to defeat the real robbers. Fiona and Gwento watched the noble couple intently, leaving them in tears. The next morning, a towering mansion appeared under the gentle sunlight. A voice sounded softly but warmly, "Miss Libya." Libya appeared with a bright smile on her lips, holding a coat, greeting the Lady Fiona, then smiled. "I heard you bravely saved the Baron and his wife." Fiona enthusiastically recounted her story. "I have arranged a private meeting with them soon, so there should be good news shortly." Libya said, "Regarding my own wishes, Miss Eunice and I also want to join the charity association." Pausing as if thinking, then she continued, "But I'm too famous in high society, and Miss Eunice is involved with the orphanage. So maybe she can't participate in this plan." Libya pushed her hand forward. "We have invited someone who can help us. I called you here to introduce her to you." Fiona sincerely thanked her. "Thank you for your concern, Miss Libya." Libya replied, "It's nothing." As the door opened, she introduced the person inside. The person standing there was a white-haired woman by the window, Miss Mia Yen, the one who would help Miss Fiona. The girl turned back to look at the two, her eyes purple, making her unable to help but admire the strange beauty. "Oh my, she's so beautiful." Fiona stepped closer, placing her hand on her chest, bowed and introduced herself. "It's an honor to meet you, miss. I am Fiona Halo. I heard you would be the one helping me." The girl covered her mouth laughing. Hi, then asked Fiona a question. "Do you really not recognize me, miss?" Hearing that voice, Fiona suddenly froze. The voice and a familiar face appeared in her mind, and Fiona began to speculate silently. Could it be Carl? The carriage rolled steadily along the long road. Inside, Fiona and Carl sat next to each other. She secretly glanced at Carl, seeing him closing his eyes to rest. A strange thought flashed through Fiona's mind. It was really strange. The image of Carl dressed as a girl appeared, making her involuntarily sigh silently. Clearly, she had seen Carl dressed as a girl before, but the atmosphere and appearance this time were completely different. Fiona carefully observed Carl's peaceful face. He looked no different than a noble young lady. Her heart suddenly filled with indescribable emotions, once again marveling at Libya's talent. Suddenly, the female countess spoke up to announce, "We're almost there, miss." She pointed towards a magnificent castle. "Magnificent? It's our secret base." Fiona looked at the female countess with a thoughtful, wandering gaze. The female countess had invited her to a tea party at the mansion. From any perspective, she was a kind and elegant lady. She placed her hand on her chest as if to steady her heartbeat, then said, "The closer we get to the mansion, the more nervous I feel." She silently observed the situation. Nobles like these were too easy for Carl. Hearing that, she looked forward even more, knowing that even a famous northern mage was just like any ordinary person. The feeling of privilege in sharing secrets with such a figure and the opportunity to befriend someone everyone admired. Carl used that sense of kinship as bait, and this woman did not hesitate to take the bait. All three stepped through the large door. The female countess led the way and said cheerfully, "It's an honor to welcome the miss and her friends." To join our group, she smiled warmly at the two. "This is truly a joyful event." The female countess continued to guide and invited Carl inside. Fiona and Carl quietly followed her down the hallway without saying a word. In short, the plan to join the secret society with the help of Libya and Carl succeeded. Carl quietly asked, "The mansion looks quite old and antique, doesn't it?" The female countess hesitated for a moment before answering, "I'm not quite sure. But it seems to be the mansion of a declining noble family." She told rumors that made the atmosphere heavier. "I heard they bought it at an auction." While the female countess spoke, Carl discreetly glanced at Fiona's expression, then fell silent, saying nothing more. Waiting until the woman walked a bit ahead, Carl leaned close and whispered into Fiona's ear, "Miss, what's wrong?" She got asked, and suddenly got flustered without answering right away. "No, that's—" Fiona thought silently she couldn't stay calm. In front of a large door, the noblewoman stopped. Confused thoughts passed through her mind. She had felt it all along. The anxiety spreading through Fiona. What is this uneasy feeling? The female countess grasped the door handle and pushed it open, revealing a lavish, splendid party inside. Fiona and Carl couldn't hide their surprise. This place was truly magnificent. They looked around at all the nobles and children, silently judging It looked no different than a high society ball. Suddenly, they saw a little girl walking with a nobleman. Doubts arose in their hearts. Fiona followed the female countess and asked, "There seem to be a lot of children." She just smiled, seemingly indifferent. "Oh, you noticed?" The female countess explained to the two. "This group often reenacts the pleasures of old nobility, and the event we're reenacting this time." The surroundings became noisy and lively. Her explanation made Fiona and Carl both feel excited. Their hearts beat faster. The female countess turned back with a gentle smile, but her words sent chills down others' spines. Doll decoration. Fiona was startled, unable to believe her ears. What? Carl, she became agitated and worried. No one here was normal. Carl realized this and immediately put his arm around Fiona to reassure her. This action startled her. Carl laughed. What a blast. He smiled, pretending to ask the female countess, "Could you introduce me further?" Carl glanced at Fiona to warn her. Meanwhile, the female countess was confident. "Oh, I knew you'd be interested." Receiving Carl's gaze, Fiona nodded to show she understood, and the female countess agreed to Carl's request. "Yes, I will lead you inside." The game called doll decorating is a vice of the nobility, where they flaunt and compete to get the most beautiful servant boy. If these servant boys are children who were adopted and then lost contact, that pain is truly indescribable. They say they will raise the children like their own when bringing them home, yet they treat them like toys. There is no doubt that in this game they starve the children because they believe skinny is beautiful, or force them to wear clothes so tight they are uncomfortable. This is abusive behavior. When all three moved, little Carl quietly reminded Fiona to endure no matter how disgusting it was. Miss Fiona closed her eyes, trying to control her emotions, feeling uneasy inside. Noticing Carl's expression was a bit strange. Carl didn't look well either. "I have to quickly regain my composure." Fiona approached the countess, smiling, and said, "Madam, so how do you get a doll?" The Countess nodded and gave some suggestions. "Would you like to take a look? I will invite the broker." She slowly went upstairs, then suddenly stopped. "Ah." The Countess turned back with a light smile. "I have a piece of advice for you." Then she added some vague words. "Initially choose an obedient doll, even if it might not be very beautiful." The words made Fiona only force a smile as the Countess disappeared. She immediately cursed silently. Those insane bastards. Carl next to her couldn't stand it either. Feeling nauseous, Fiona supported Carl, who anxiously asked, "Carl, are you okay? Your face has been pale all this time." Carl tried to stay calm and replied, "I'm fine," while Fiona instructed, "If you feel unwell, you must tell me, okay?" A small footstep sounded near them. Fiona looked over and saw a girl bowing her head low with sad eyes following a man. Fiona suddenly called out a name. "Lies!" Uncertainly, Carl heard and turned to look. "Lies there!" Lies hung her head and walked on, seemingly not recognizing the two. Fiona hurried, wanting to rescue the girl. "No, I have to save her now." But a hand held her back. Fiona didn't care and wanted to break free. She couldn't leave Lies in a place like this. They couldn't abandon the children. Carl called out loudly to Miss, making Fiona snap out of it. He gave careful instructions. "I will stay here and keep watching that child," Carl held her hand and advised. After meeting the broker, "You should return to the mansion," Fiona immediately objected. "What? But you don't look well." "I can't leave you behind." But Carl seriously said, "Miss, if both of us cause a commotion here, this will fail." He suggested to Fiona to go outside and prepare to attack. Carl's words and determined eyes made Fiona stunned. Carl's hand still tightly held her arm, assuring, "I will protect Lisa." Fiona finally reluctantly agreed, feeling helpless inside with no other choice. Fiona continued walking uneasily. "Carl, I'm counting on you." Nearby, the Countess was talking with a broker. The broker approached and greeted Fiona politely. "Miss Fiona, I have brought the broker. You can find a high-class doll for the lady here." "Especially not?" The tone was vile, treating children like toys, making Fiona want to be angry. Good items are usually sold quickly, so I don't know if there are any left. But she tried to suppress the rage at those bastards, smiling politely inside. Fiona hated them to the bone, thinking she would destroy it. A large castle bathed in sunset. Inside, the delicate feet of a girl gently walking down the hallway. She stopped before a large door where the butler was waiting. "You're here, miss." He bowed respectfully as Fiona approached. His Highness was waiting to discuss the news. Without hesitation, she pushed the door. Fiona's eyes filled with love when she saw the person inside. Sigrun turned at the sound, Fiona's eyes widened in surprise as the girl ran toward her. She rushed into Sigrun's arms, hugging him tightly. Sigrun hadn't reacted yet and gently called Fiona. He softly asked, "I heard they took adopted children to play doll games?" Sigrun wrapped his arms fully around Fiona as if to comfort. They exploited the children's orphanage origins, because even if reported missing, no real family would truly search for them. She buried her head in his neck angrily. Those bastards. Sigrun only held Fiona tighter as if wanting to calm her. She was both angry and heartbroken. How can they be human? How can they treat human lives like toys? After venting all her frustration, Fiona took a deep breath to calm down. She looked up at him. "Now, I'm a bit calmer," Fiona expressed her feelings. "I was very angry." Sigrun looked at her with concern. Fiona slowly recounted everything. "Not only did I fail to keep my promise to Lies, but when I saw her caught in danger, I couldn't immediately save her." His eyes gradually closed as guilt flooded back. There was still the matter of what I had to do for Carl, so that's why I was so angry. I couldn't bear it. He bent down, touching foreheads with her, softly calling Fiona. Sigrun hugged Fiona tightly, his gaze sincere. "I will definitely save them," his voice calm. "Carl." Lies paused. Then Sigrun continued. "And me too. Everyone who trusts you believes you can do it." Fiona silently looked at him, emotions rising. After relieving their feelings, the two sat down to talk. Fiona shared her plan. "We have to attack that group as soon as possible." She paused for a moment, then spoke in a low voice. "But this involves the noble class. Even the Ducalo has no legitimate reason to arrest them." Sigrun tilted his head and asked, "So that's why you called me here?" Fiona nodded. "Yes, I need your help." She pressed close to him, her eyes staring as if threatening to test his resolve. Sigrun laughed. "All right, just use me." He started to get cocky again. In cases like this, being a prince does come in handy. Fiona was helpless, not knowing what else to say. "Surely no one looks down on a prince's status like you do." Sigrun laughed heartily and gently replied, "Don't worry. They are troublemakers disrupting the Empire's order, so Carl, the royal knight, stepping in is completely justified." Fiona smiled brightly, thanking him. "Please help me as quickly as possible." After that, he sighed with a sad face. "Now, you have to leave? Immediately?" Fiona kept smiling, implying it would be better if Sigrun left right now. "You're right. Okay, I'll go right away. We also need to speed up the investigation of the Crown Prince's case." Suddenly, Fiona grabbed his hand. Sigrun's face showed clear worry. "Be careful." Her sparkling eyes looked straight at Sigrun because Shadow could be lurking anywhere and any time. He bent down, looking at her silently for a moment, then said, "Seeing you show your feelings like this makes me very happy." Fiona annoyedly lightly hit him. "I'm worried about you, and you say you're happy?" Sigrun smiled. He hugged her. "Because you do that, it means you trust me, and I will do everything to restore things for you, so don't worry." Sigrun continued softly, "Don't worry, Fiona." The two ended with a passionate kiss. "We promised to trust each other and complete our missions safely." The scene shifted to the Noble Association mansion. An arrest warrant was issued. "On behalf of the royal family, I order the detention of all nobles present here for child abuse." Everyone panicked and fled like a disturbed beehive. Fiona stood up and ordered the soldiers firmly, "Protect the children, and arrest everyone present in this mansion." All the soldiers shouted in unison, "Yes." Fiona frowned, thinking she must quickly handle this so the ringleaders can't escape. She shouted loudly, "Subdue them immediately." The nobles scattered, pushing and falling. "Don't block the way! Get out!" A soldier shouted loudly, reporting the broker girl just ran out the door. Fiona commanded the soldiers, "Don't let her escape. Corner her to the dead end on the right." She immediately ordered. Then together they tied her up. The soldiers surrounded her, yes, forcing her to kneel before Fiona. She stammered, "Madam, how do you know the layout of this mansion?" She stood with arms crossed, looking down at me. "Of course I know it well," she coldly continued, "because this is Count Green's mansion where I used to live before." The broker recalled the conversation between Carl and the Countess. Fiona was thoughtful. At that time, Carl asked for information. "This mansion looks quite old and antique, but only got vague answers from her. I don't know much, but I heard this is a noble's mansion." Fiona remained silent, her eyes deep. This huge mansion couldn't help the fate of this family. The broker still couldn't believe it. Impossible. But Fiona didn't care, ordered to arrest all of them and gather them in the living room. on the first floor. After that, she glanced down, thinking about how to handle the broker. Using magic to clean up would be easier, but there are too many children around. The soldiers had already gone to arrest Carl, the noble. Left over and searching for young Carl after hesitation, Fiona decided, it's better to hand this place over to Sir Carl now. Lazen Carl, suddenly a scream echoed, young lady. It's Carl. You're holding someone back. Catch him. He's holding the ledger. Carl emphasized not to let him escape. Fiona was stunned, unable to react. Carl, she immediately grabbed her shoe and hit the guy with all her anger. Give it here to me. That guy cried out in pain, unable to resist. Fiona turned back to support Carl. Hit him herself, seeing it was fierce. Realized he was trembling. She panicked and asked Carl, Are you okay, Carl, then? Miss Thou. Fiona panicked, heart racing too fast, she silently guessed. It seemed he was having trouble breathing, anxiety disorder, panting. Fiona, worried, looked at Carl, not knowing what to do. She recalled strange events. When entering the mansion, thinking back, she saw since entering this space his complexion had clearly worsened. In Fiona's mind appeared an image of Carl hanging with limbs, tangled tightly, not knowing if Carl was related to that doll game from the start. When entering this hallway, he was not surprised at all. Whenever Carl's complexion became abnormal, though all was speculation. But if true, he was sweating cold, panting, then maybe Carl was trapped in those horrific memories. She grabbed Carl's shoulders tightly, calling his name. Carl heard it. Carl gradually calmed down. Eyes slowly opened around him, filled with gentle voices. Do you see me? A blurry figure was in front of him, looking at me. You are not alone. That figure gently comforted Carl. Nothing will happen to you. Carl's eyes gradually became soulful. He was safe now. In his mind appeared a pair of hands reaching out to catch him. It was Fiona. She had saved Carl. That gentle voice still echoed in his ears. Carl, no matter what happens, I will protect you. Her hand tightly held the hands of a child. That was Carl, so everything will be fine. Carl hugged Fiona tightly, resting his head on the young lady's shoulder, softly replied, Yes. I'm here. Fiona helped Carl stand up, asking if he was better now. Carl sadly said, Yes, thank you. I have revealed my pitiful state. Suddenly, he remembered something urgent. Carl's face became worried. Now I'm fine, so please go save lives, his anxious face sweating. Please go save lives, young lady. He pointed to the third floor last night. I told him to take advantage of the chaos to approach and go upstairs. A pair of legs hurriedly ran up. Fiona flew up the stairs. Lives, wait a moment. She tried to run as fast as possible. I will, Fiona refused to lose to fate, not letting her people suffer what was predetermined in this novel anymore. Her eyes full of determination, rejecting all ordained misfortune. Seeing the girl was with Count Curtis. Fiona called out loudly, but Lisa did not respond. The girl sat with her head down as if unconscious, seeing that she sped up, running toward that room. Suddenly, Fiona's eyes widened as if seeing something terrible. Bill Cosby, the man, slowly turned and smiled at her. Fiona's heart skipped a beat. She questioned what he intended to do to her. Fiona slowly stepped into the room. A heavy atmosphere covered, and the dim light from the chandelier made everything gloomier. She looked straight at Curtis, standing in the middle of the room. Bill Curtis with a cold expression, but inside like a volcano about to erupt. Unexpectedly meeting again in this situation. Why was he at this mansion? Count Curtis turned back, coldly greeting. Long time no see. I also happen to have business at this mansion. Fiona frowned, surprised enough to forget manners. He was behind this doll game. Why? The anger of the people appeared in her mind, recalling what he had done before. Then that possibility was not small. Curtis smirked, his smile sharp as a blade. Fiona gritted her teeth. Her face darkened, hands clenched so tight her knuckles turned white. So, I will continue my work. The child sitting behind passed the baby to me. Curtis still showed a shameless face. He introduced to Fiona that this child would become Shadow's vessel. Curtis still showed an impassive face. He introduced to Fiona that this child would become the vessel for Shadow. Lace closed her eyes tightly, sinking into silence around her. She couldn't believe her ears. What? Curtis raised his hand toward the girl. Talking about what he was about to do, he had offered a sacrifice so Shadow could accumulate more power. Fiona was shocked to hear this. He tilted his head back and continued speaking. Now only the final stage remained. If obtaining a complete body with great power, Curtis's face became terrifying. Shadow would become a perfect entity. She opened her eyes wide. Wait, the word sacrifice means, could it be that those events earlier in some mansion flashed through Fiona's mind? The basement of the Earl Eric's mansion. A pile of corpses scattered in the basement. The death row prisoners lying there. Curtis laughed wickedly upon hearing this. I don't know. How you found out. But now I don't need to hide anymore. His eyes were full of pride, a smile containing a carefully calculated plan, only one step left for her to become perfect. Curtis raised his hand as if invoking an invisible power. The stage of obtaining the body was near. Fiona raised her hand to summon power. Flames blazed fiercely in her palm, her gaze turning sharp and cold. Do you think I will sit idly by and watch this? Curtis seemed unaffected. You want to stop me? This child will have the honor of merging with her. His hand stroked the armrest of the chair. Yet you want to take away this rare lifetime opportunity? Curtis walked behind the chair. His eyes flashed with a sinister gleam, his tone teasing. Or do you crave this position? Fiona flinched hearing this, her face flushed with anger. Hateful. He remains calm as if nothing happened. Then I will let this young lady choose. The girl's eyes lowered her head, surrounded by an indescribable melancholy, whether honor or submission. That shadow will belong to this child. Fiona seemed to realize something. Your target has been me all along, hasn't it? Suddenly, some energy began accumulating above, surprising both of them. The black energy appeared more and more. Curtis grew more excited. Ah, finally, shadow has appeared. Fiona didn't understand what these things and his words meant. From within the black energy appeared Fiona's original soul. Fiona couldn't believe her eyes. Fiona's original soul gradually took shape inside the energy orb. She opened her eyes and looked around. The original soul bent down to look at Lays, with a gloomy, terrifying face. Her body carefully observed the girl Lays. Fiona screamed in shock, "Stop!" The original soul paid no attention. Her eyes only focused on the poor child. The original soul reached out to touch Lays' face, who was abandoned by her parents. A dark voice recited the girl's entire past, then how she was exploited by one person after another. Fiona on the other side was stunned, not knowing what to say at this moment. She pondered. Did she know and understand Lays' past because her power was greater, like Billie Eilish said? Fiona felt something invisible growing stronger, the shape of shadow becoming clearer than before. Perhaps the original soul still stood there unmoving. This child will only face misfortune in the future. She will be lonely. She flew close to the girl, her voice soft like I am. Fiona pondered. No, that's not right. Something flashed past. The original soul dashed toward Fiona, grabbing her neck tightly, making Fiona unable to breathe. She struggled with difficulty. Her magic was too strong. I can't resist her power. Fiona's magic was being drained. She had never felt magic depletion before. She nearly hallucinated. The original soul almost grew many times larger, hair disheveled, squeezing Fiona's body in her hands. But compared to Shadow, her magic was just a drop of sweet water in the ocean. She shouted, "Stop pretending like that!" The original soul's eyes widened. And then this child would again have the emotions I once had. She will become like me. Fiona struggled to speak. No, that's not right. Surely she will find her own happiness. The image of the smiling girl appeared in her mind, and that happiness was not only for Lays. Fiona tried her best to pull the original soul's hand off her neck, but she was too strong. She could only advise gently. Fiona's voice softened. She can change too. Looking at her fierce face, I don't beg you to forgive me. She spoke from the bottom of her heart. I only hope you can be happy. Noticing the situation was unfavorable, Curtis urged urgently, What are you waiting for, Savior? Seeing the original soul unresponsive, he grabbed the girl's face tightly. Now is the time to accumulate power and be reborn as a perfect god. Curtis's hand squeezed the girl's face tightly. Screaming wildly is the path to happiness. For everyone, suddenly a black energy surrounded, causing him to startle and release his grip. The black energy gradually bound Curtis tightly, while he could only scream in despair. No, not like this. Curtis does not give up, but begs, please, please. The soul core has not yet left Fiona's hand. I am no longer Fiona or anything else, her voice dark and frightening. I cannot become anything. And I am worthless, the soul core shouted in anger. I am just a disaster, causing her hands to grip even tighter. Fiona noticed the black energy on the other side had disappeared. It had finished absorbing. She was a little worried this time. It was not just absorbing the soul, but also the body. Fiona was shocked. No way she felt something terrifying. The magic was now much stronger than before. From being strangled too long, her eyes gradually became blurry, losing focus. It's hard to breathe. Somewhere appeared a hand gripping a sword. The person swung the sword and cut into the soul core, forcing her to release her grip. Fiona fell but still tried to look at half of that person's face gradually appearing. Release, my fiancé is Sigrun. Running in, Fiona looked up, surprised to see herself being held in Sigrun's arms. She could not have expected this. Sigrun was far away. The soul core was pushed back, staggering. She held her arm, moaning in extreme pain. She raised her head, eyes full of resentment. A fierce scream burst from her throat. Why do I again, suddenly clutching her head, crying madly? Why do I have to fight alone like this? Why do black energies spread throughout the room? Enveloping the space with an invisible threat, Fiona suddenly felt a sharp headache. Sudden pains made her dizzy. Sigrun hurriedly supported Fiona. Worriedly asked Fiona what's wrong. She could only clutch her head. Her head hurt, sweat pouring down like rain. Something for a long time later, Fiona barely uttered a few words, her voice trembling, creeping into her head. Sigrun shouted, calling her name in despair as Fiona's vision blurred. Pieces of the story began to appear in her mind, fragmented images of times being cared for, but also times being criticized and scolded. Some were always loved, but some were always hated. Life is so unfair. But as always, Fiona's soul core once again predicted a tragic ending. She did not know that she had endured these things thousands of times. While the soul was weary from the endless cycle, she suddenly realized she was reliving a life over and over again, and then the story began to change. She found an AI that could help her escape this loop. One of the creators of this world. Fiona opened her eyes wide, clutching her chest in sharp pain, breathing hard, her complexion pale without a trace of color. Sigrun could only call Fiona's name helplessly, Fiona's eyes full of worry. Are you okay? As if awakened just now, Fiona was shocked to realize something. The resonance, recalling the soul core's crazed, painful face. Fiona was certain it was Fiona's memory. She could not believe she had to relive over and over again in this story. Why Fiona's pain? The person who could not escape this cycle appeared very clearly. The doll game incident at Green Mansion ended when Shadow was injured and had to retreat. The thorn in Bill Curtis's eye could not end gloriously and disappear without being remembered by AI. He was erased from everyone's memory. That was the proper ending then. Arend Clovis and the Royal Knights cleaned up the scene. Arend Clovis was thoughtful, eyes full of consideration. If Shadow was injured like that, then maybe it would not appear. For a while he spoke in a serious but speculative tone, because it needed to focus on recovering with the power accumulated so far. Fiona felt glad the storm had passed, though very disappointed for not finding any trace of the Crown Prince in the collected books. She stood chatting happily with Carl. But I am glad Carl has recovered well, and the image of the orphanage, filled with gentle sunlight, appeared in Fiona's mind, and the children who were captured also at Lay's orphanage were rescued and sitting in the room, eyes dreamy, looking out the window outside. The call of that AI transmitted into lives. Sister, can you come in? The bright-eyed girl smiled excitedly, baring her teeth. The forward line lost a player. Sister Fiona. Fiona entered the room. Her hands held a basket of items. Fiona gently set it down, sat beside Lays, and asked if she was feeling well. Lays sat on the bed, her eyes sparkling, replying, Yes, I feel like I just woke up from a long sleep. Outside, Carl and Ken were standing guard at the door, listening to the conversation. So you've rested very well, huh? I'm so glad. Sorry for coming late. Fiona's gaze softened as she looked at Lisa. She should have stopped this before Lisa encountered it. Perhaps those bad memories left wounds in her heart. Compassion welled up in her for the girl's fate. If she could erase all those memories, she would gladly do it. Looking into the girl's bright eyes, Fiona's heart tightened. You must have had a hard time. Suddenly, the girl grabbed Fiona's pinky finger. Lays looked up at Fiona seriously. But you still use your wonderful magic to save everyone. Lay's smile was enchanting. I believe you will save everyone. The afternoon sunlight filtering through the window made the girl even more radiant. So, I'm not afraid of that person named Bill. Fiona's eyes welled with tears hearing this. When I see you, those memories don't scare me anymore. The bright sunlight shone into the small room through the window. If that helps me be stronger, Fiona and Lay's hands clasped tightly together. Then I'll lean on you anytime I want. Outside the door, the kids peeked at Fiona, who turned and smiled. Even Carl was like that. The kids were startled. She continued, Carl, you can also lean on me. The whole group quickly rushed in, laughing and chatting cheerfully. Fiona bent down to play with the kids. I won't let you, Carl, have to worry and think alone anymore, she affirmed. That's my promise. Fiona smiled brightly. Her gentle voice was like a stream. I hope you all can comfortably rely on adults. Ken looked at the scene and smiled happily. Carl, leaning against the door, also glanced in, feeling peaceful inside. Perhaps the events that passed made everyone bond more closely. In another development, Sigrun was standing talking with Marquis Eric when there was a call. Prince Ken entered with Fiona. "By your order, I have brought Miss Fiona here." Sigrun thanked him for his effort, then his gaze shifted to Fiona, serious but also somewhat gentle. Fiona and Sigrun looked toward Marquis Eric. The man mentioned lowered his eyes with embarrassment. He was the one who helped the Crown Prince. Fiona's gaze sharpened. Marquis Eric bowed his head and said, "We did not expect that our family would be at the center of this chaos." Then he lowered his voice. "It's truly shameful." Hearing this, Sigrun advised, "Please don't blame yourself. Your ignorance was due to Marquis Eric's arbitrary decision." He hung his head in shame. "That's right. My son did nothing wrong." His hands clenched tightly, trembling. "The Crown Prince and I created a monster that cannot be saved." His voice gradually deepened. At first, he didn't believe it either. He paused, then told the story. But after witnessing her power, he could no longer deny it. Eric's face darkened. He sighed. Indeed, the power of the divine. He recalled the image of energies spreading black throughout the room, terrifying him to the extreme. The worst disaster in the world had allied with us, and we were the ones harboring unjust greed. Eric looked up at the energies increasing every second. Shadow not only swallowed the condemned, but also began to consume the servants of our family. His face broke out in cold sweat. It's unbelievable that humans dare to think they can control the worst disaster in the world. The black energy surrounded Eric's hands. It's unbelievable that humans dare to think they can control the worst disaster in the world. It was like a person playing tag with him. I ran away immediately. Eric held his head, trembling, expressing his feelings. "I want to ask for help from the Crown Prince." Sigrun, but Shadow kept blocking him. He shared his hardship. I was caught while hiding alone in an old villa. Hearing this story, Sigrun said nothing further. Fiona also had no comment. Only Ken bowed his head to restrain his emotions. After a while, Fiona spoke to Marquis Eric. She slowly approached the Marquis, who could not avoid his punishment. This incident threatened the safety of the Empire, and it was an important event. Fiona extended her hand to welcome, but the outcome could still change. Depending on how the Marquis acted, she asked, "Are you willing to cooperate with me?" The Emperor, seriously ill, lay on the bed struggling to breathe. The man, drenched in sweat, coughed a few times with a hoarse voice, trying to ask, "Enoch, Sigrun, where are those two?" Crown Prince Enoch stepped up to stand beside the Emperor's bed and looked at him, speaking, "Father, we have arrived." Enoch spoke about the Emperor's condition and quietly asked about his health, which seemed to be worsening. "Yes, maybe we should call Mother again." The Emperor slowly agreed with Enoch's suggestion. "Yes, right. I also miss that woman very much." After a few seconds of hesitation, he added, "But the Empress is currently by my side and very devoted. So it's okay." His words made Enoch not bother to lower his gaze, but instead look at him with cold eyes. As if wanting to take down the Emperor immediately, he raised his eyebrows, thinking about the Princess Arya's mother. In that dark room, only a shadow illuminated the silhouette of the Crown Prince's back. He thought that with just a little more time, his plan would be smoothly completed. Until then, if Father remained alive, it would be more beneficial. Enoch thought of that woman's image, and if she could take good care of him, he could still control the princess's position. The more he thought, the more wrinkles appeared on Enoch's face from discomfort. He bit his lip tightly, thinking that woman wouldn't help at all. Things couldn't be left like this. Anyway, the plan was nearing its final stage. Perhaps it was time to start executing it. Enoch turned away in disgust, saying, "Why is that ruthless younger brother so slow? Truly, an unfilial person." The seriously ill Emperor couldn't sit up and stared at Enoch after hearing his words. Enoch tried to persuade the Emperor, wanting to shake his initial decision. "Father, someone who can't even take care of family matters, the throne is just a flashy exterior to him." Enoch recounted the few times he met Sigrun, which were scarce, and saw him hurriedly going out. Recently he had started neglecting state affairs, to the point that his presence was even more faint than Princess Arya's. If Sigrun succeeded to the throne, he would inevitably face opposition from the people. His dark thoughts began to clearly emerge. So Enoch smiled arrogantly and greedily, proposing to the Emperor, "Please, Father, grant me the power." Enoch's crazed, greedy face leaned close to the Emperor. "Because I am the one the people are worshipping." Hearing this, the Emperor was suspicious and didn't believe it. Suddenly, a loud noise came from the door. Alongside the appearance of Sigrun, the room lit up brightly. He heroically stepped in with Ares. "Forgive me, Your Majesty," the voice echoed in the room. Though not loud, it brought pressure. The blond man's face was dotted with sweat, his tone panicked as he turned to speak. "What is this disrespectful act?" Sigrun, but in a moment he regained his composure. Seeing Sigrun enter without permission, he harshly shouted, "Father is still lying on the sickbed." Seeing the two enter, though very weak, the Emperor's face showed clear fatigue, dotted with sweat. Accompanied by a few coughs, he said, "What exactly is going on?" Sigrun looked at Enoch, then directed his gaze to the king. Calmly, he said, "Although I also feel very sorry to face this situation, I must investigate your duty for secretly attacking the villages." His voice carried some pressure, like passing judgment on Enoch. He continued, "And killing innocent villagers." Enoch angrily pointed at Sigrun and shouted, "What? You're late and still say nonsense?" Sigrun ignored him. Enoch raised his hand, ordering Ares to bring the report to the Emperor, saying, "He is slandering you, father." Enoch stood in a corner, shouting, "Don't judge others without evidence." The Emperor saw the small scroll brought by Eric. He asked, "What is this?" Sigrun replied, "Father, this is the testimony report of Marquis Eric." He had described the scene of the village when he arrived, which had become devastated. The ground was covered with the villagers' corpses. Sigrun bitterly said, "All the monster riots until now were orchestrated by him. He built his achievements by exchanging the lives of countless villagers." Sigrun walked around the village, observing the wounds of the people who had been stripped of their lives. Kia added, "There were also traces of him arbitrarily taking the condemned Carl outside." The Emperor held the scroll of the statement and read. Seeing this, his heart skipped a beat, his heart pounding hard, unable to believe what had happened. The Emperor trembled, unable to believe the truth, then agitatedly said, This is all true. Why is it always nonsense?" The Emperor, unwilling to believe, asked Enoch further, "I could never do such terrible things. Who can guarantee this testimony?" Sigrun was not surprised by his father's reaction. He calmly told him, "Father, please look at the bottom part of the statement." Sigrun listed familiar names, Marquis Eric, Duke Halong, and Duke Ernest. All had clearly acknowledged the matter and signed as witnesses. The Emperor tightly gripped the statement, causing the paper to crumple. This incident was recognized by many nobles as serious and could become a disgrace to the royal family. Sigrun did not want the royal family to suffer this shame. He was trying to resolve it, then informed the Emperor, "Therefore the Princess Arya and I," his tone serious and sincere, continued, "have involved Carl and the nobles to protect the royal family's honor. But countless innocent civilians were caught up in the prince's farce and lost their lives." Hearing Sigrun's words, Enoch clenched his teeth. With no defense against the Emperor's darkened face, Sigrun did not wait and asked Enoch, "Can you bear their anger?" The shocking news made even the Emperor lose his composure. He breathed heavily and gasped, pressing his favored son. "Enoch, confess yourself. All of this is true, right?" Enoch, not expecting his father to believe Sigrun, stammered, calling father. The Emperor was furious. Clenching and wrinkling the blanket covering him, he kept coughing harshly and shouted loudly, "How dare you?" Enoch panicked, bowing low, sweat pouring down his face, saying, "I will explain, father, please listen." Then he turned and shouted at Sigrun, "I already know you are an unfilial son, but I didn't expect you to insult me like this while I am ill." Sigrun remained calm, his gray-blue eyes staring straight at Enoch like the clear sky seeing through the traitor who harmed the country. His older brother could not cover everything alone. A group of guards behind Sigrun thunderously stepped forward as he spoke. "We will go somewhere else to talk in more detail, father." Enoch was dragged away by two tall guards. He was startled and shouted, "What are you doing?" "Let me go, father. This half-breed son is framing me." Enoch was escorted away, still shouting. The Emperor held his face in pain, saying, "I can't believe this. This isn't a dream. Such an absurd thing." Sigrun calmly, with a hint of sadness in his tone, said, "It's a pity you can't have me as your great achievement." Hearing this, the Emperor paused for a few seconds, then looked up at Sigrun and asked, "What did you just say?" His tired face now showed surprise, as if unable to believe what he just heard. His two hands trembled slightly, clenching tightly. Sigrun remained calm, looking at his father and continuing, "I caught a dragon and achieved glory, even though I am a lowly, illegitimate son. but I was recognized as a prince and was planned to be awarded a medal. Don't you understand? Why can't you fill your petty pride without wearing my achievements as your own? You truly are a fool." Sigrun's words were like a bucket of cold water thrown in the emperor's face. He was stunned and bewildered, not expecting Sigrun to insult him so directly. Inside, he felt fear and anger, but hearing those words, he could not deny them. Too angry to hold back, he shouted, "You! Are you not afraid of the consequences? Do you want to be stripped of your right to inherit the throne?" After the emperor finished speaking, Sigrun remained calm as usual, smiling slightly, finding it increasingly amusing. He had never cared about the throne. Hearing his father say that, he couldn't help but feel a bit amused, but he still gently said, "I never wanted it from the start." The emperor was stunned by his words, but he still gently said that he never wanted it from the start. The emperor was stunned by his words. In this world, everyone wants to hold power in their hands. The greater the power, the greater the benefits. Faced with such temptation, it's hard for anyone to resist power, but he chose to give it up, which made the emperor feel confused and unable to see clearly who he really was. Making him feel scared, he panicked and said, "Do you think that makes sense? Do you want to have power? So, you didn't refuse the prince position, but the more I hear you, the more disappointed I get. It seems time has worn down your spirit." Making the king slow and unclear in thought, he turned toward the door and walked over. While walking, he casually dropped a line of explanation. "For someone about to die like you, it's really exhausting." The emperor was stunned and scared, saying, "What? What did you say? You intend to kill me?" He paused briefly. "I have heard that from the one who knows this world best." At this point, an image popped into his mind of a beautiful young lady sitting there. Eyes half closed, hands resting on the ground, with a gentle and elegant demeanor. The emperor shouted angrily, "Sigrun, I have made you the legitimate prince." He retorted, "Is this how you repay such a favor?" His angry words seemed about to explode, but the emperor stayed still, waiting to see his reaction as his steps grew closer. Suddenly, stopping at the door, he turned his head back and coldly said, "Recognizing you as prince was only to satisfy your vanity. Now it's time to end that foolish game. If you die and meet your mother again, kneel and apologize to her." After speaking, he opened the door, letting light flood into the king's dark, cold, and lonely room. The sound of the door creaking echoed dryly as it moved toward Enoch, who was currently restrained by a soldier. Inside, he couldn't help but feel agitated. "Carl, you can't escape. Do you think doing this will keep you safe?" Enoch angrily continued, "When my charges are cleared, I will kill your entire family, Carl." Then he threatened to kill Carl one by one. Hearing this, the soldiers were somewhat frightened and hesitated. Suddenly, he pulled out a knife, causing one soldier to be injured. Unable to let things continue, the soldiers rushed in to restrain him. He seemed mad, shouting, "No one is allowed near. Anyone who comes close, I will kill them all. Get lost." Saying that, he ran off. Seeing this, everyone shouted, "Catch him quickly!" As they chased, Enoch tried to contact others but failed. The more he thought, the angrier he became in this critical situation with nowhere to rely on. He thought, even if I trample on Marquis Eric 1,000 times, it won't be enough. Does he dare betray me? Why isn't Curtis responding? Surely he has been discovered and is avoiding contact. There is no one left in this world I can trust. Suddenly, recalling something, he silently called out, "That's right. I still have one way to survive." He looked up at the sky and shouted, "Shadow, damn it! Come out here!" Shadow gradually gathered, forming an arm, then a face, then legs. Finally, a girl materialized midair. He shouted wildly at her, waving a sword, saying, "In serious situations like this, even if I don't call you, you should come immediately to help. All this time, who has helped you gain such power?" Saying this, he ordered her, "All right, kill all those chasing me, go." "No, kill them all immediately." Shadow sat hugging herself, looking at Enoch and asked, "All of them?" Enoch impatiently shouted back, "Exactly. You are the disaster. But erase all those troublesome things, you damn monster." Enoch continued speaking amid Shadow's silent daze and the chaos surrounding her body. She sat thinking under Enoch's urging. After a while, Shadow whispered, "If not now, then when, Enoch?" Hearing that, Enoch couldn't help but angrily curse her. "What? I've already given you many death row prisoners. Do you think they just sprouted from the ground? At least count them among the things I've done for you. This useless thing, Shadow said irritably after hearing that, repeating the phrase and asking, "Useless?" Enoch swung his hand outward, cursing and recounting his efforts. "That's right, you bastard. Do you know how much I risked?" The more he spoke, the more impatient Enoch became. He spoke of things he disliked but had to do to help her, saying, "I balanced the power, so I sacrificed my human life for you." Shadow bowed her head, deep in thought, hugging her increasingly chaotic body. "I had to bow before commoners like worms and mingle with superstitious fools," Enoch said irritably, revealing the humiliation he endured in having to suffer insults from Sigrun. He kept cursing and insulting her. "I have supported you to the best of my ability, but you only know how to ruin everything." Shadow heard that. The slender fingers began to move, but Enoch also couldn't hold back and said to her, "Living so selfishly." He kept cursing and blaming Shadow Henry in the end. Only he was left alone. "It was you who destroyed everything." Shadow did not let him curse her. Small black lightning bolts began to appear, surrounding Enoch's body, cursing Shadow. "If it weren't for you, none of this would have happened. Like this. If someone like you didn't exist." Shadow chaotically unleashed black lightning, striking the surrounding space, flickering like a glitch. Enoch cursed continuously until out of breath, trying to catch his breath under the drizzling sky. Then said Enoch 7, turned away resentfully. "When you controlled the monsters, I thought you could fulfill your role, but one after another, each only knows how to destroy. I will repay all this humiliation." Suddenly, a large black sword stabbed Enoch from behind. A single thrust. To his astonishment and bewilderment, his body reacted too slowly. Blood spurted from his mouth in pain. "Your role ends here." Then tens of thousands. Large spikes stabbed Enoch from many directions, causing him to scream in pain helplessly. How could an ordinary human body endure? Finally, Enoch died. Before Shadow's fury, she finally spoke. "I have taken on the role of both disaster and monster." Shadow stood straight in the air above Enoch's blood-soaked body, saying that role was predetermined and unchangeable. She now unleashed her wrath and lamented. "No matter how many times I try, how many times..." Shadow realized herself now. "That's right. I am the disaster, and I will kill everyone according to your will." In the following days, at Fiona's room, she was standing in front of the mirror while the servant helped her put on a tight black corset that hugged her full figure. Fiona slightly tilted her head, touching the shiny red jade earrings. The dragon's jewel given by the wisest dragon, Clement Tedward, had bestowed upon her earrings that shone like fiercely burning red flames. Clement Tedward had bestowed upon her, unconsciously for a moment. Fiona's gaze stopped on the jewel. She angrily grabbed Fiona's neck with both hands, making her struggle to breathe, and tried to remove the hands from her neck. Before her was an angry shadow. The glitchy, chaotic space. Fiona touched the earrings and looked in that direction, deep in thought. If the original owner of this jewel was Clement Tedward, could there be some hidden power that I don't know threatening Shadow? The maid stepped back after finishing dressing Fiona, announced everything was ready. Fiona smiled and turned toward the servant. Her sweet voice rose. "Thank you." Fiona walked away, thinking further. There was something very strange. I need to learn more about the jewel. If I can stop Fiona, I will do anything. She stepped out of the room with a cold demeanor. What I need now is wisdom like Clement Tedward's. At the Emperor's funeral, news of Crown Prince Enoch's disappearance arrived while the Emperor lay on his sick bed. The Emperor could not bear the shock and finally passed away due to prior illness during the funeral. A few guards stood silently at the door. Fiona quietly observed around and overheard, "So who will become the next emperor?" At the corner, a woman holding a fan covering her mouth whispered, "His Royal Highness the Crown Prince has not ascended yet, so please be careful with your words." Beside her a man asked, "The Crown Prince is missing, right?" Others echoed, "If the Crown Prince is not found, shouldn't we have a backup plan?" "I heard Carl's faction is gathering around Princess Arya," and Prince Sigrun. Fiona quietly left the crowd who were arguing. Tired, Fiona walked out to the wide hallway and suddenly met a dashing young man standing with arms crossed, leaning against a pillar. Seeing Fiona approach, he spoke. Author Carl coldly and deeply said, "Still has to endure an even more painful death." Fiona faced him and called his name Carl under the portrait engraved with the Emperor's image. Carl coldly said, "The Emperor had to pay the price for causing suffering to countless people." Carl recalled the scene of his mother passing before his eyes. "When I was just a child." Yet the Emperor felt refreshed, holding a glass of red wine, laughing joyfully and savoring it. At least he had to feel the humiliation and pain. Carl winced, his voice a bit sad and angry. The Emperor said that our mother and aunt had gone through it. Carl recalled the day discussing with Sigrun, the spilled teacup appearing with the silhouettes of the two people there. The prince had planned revenge with me and agreed with what I said. Then Sigrun pulled Carl's hand back. He narrated Sigrun's meaning. But now he himself said we couldn't take the risk. Carl's eyes looked down with a bit of sadness. His slow voice in front of Fiona's emotionless face, and said that the Emperor's fate would soon be decided. And before Carl could finish speaking, a light appeared from afar. A place filled with light appeared before the child inside Carl. In that world full of light, there was Fiona, smiling brightly, calling the two names. Sigrun and Fiona pulled Carl forward to his surprise. She linked arms with Sigrun and Carl on both sides, saying the wounds will not stay with us forever. Fiona looked in that direction before Carl's words. She could no longer keep a calm face but was moved. Her cheeks blushed. Carl looked down with a bit of sadness, saying, "Now I understand why he said that. And the revenge is not over yet." Seeing that Fiona wondered if judging the prince and queen, would Carl find peace? Fiona smiled kindly at Carl. A person living based on hatred, the image of the handsome young man, standing holding a book in Fiona's thoughts. The story will one day have to be closed. I am the creator of this world, but now I can no longer perform miracles. Like a creator anymore? Fiona's eyes dropped sadly, thinking whenever the lines I write cause those around me to be hurt and saddened. The scene of Fiona standing in front of the prison holding Carl inside, she thought. But I will always be by your side. She reached out to hold Carl's hand, so that anger does not control your whole life in the way I can. In that hallway, Fiona slowly approached Carl. She gently held his hand and called his name Carl. Carl, seeing that, asked Fiona what's wrong. Fiona smiled and looked up at him, answering, "I feel like you will go somewhere." Carl raised his hand so Fiona's hand could rest on his, proving that he will not disappear. "I have to watch the lady." Seeing that, Fiona felt relieved and smiled, her tone gentle with a bit of teasing. Carl said, "You still haven't forgotten your mission, huh?" "Seems like a long time has passed." Carl looked at the clock, changing the subject. "I've been rambling too much. The sky is near dusk. The sun still moves along its orbit, creating pink light shining on those clouds." Carl's tone urging Fiona, "The prince is waiting for you." Sigrun stood on the castle's upper floor looking down at the funeral site. The sunset light gradually closed. The wind began to blow stronger, tossing his hair down over his handsome, slightly sad face. Sigrun stood by the balcony railing, his eyes vacant. Fiona approached and stroked his face. Sigrun looked tired. "Are you okay?" Sigrun smiled. "Nothing's wrong. Don't worry. Maybe everything had to end, right?" Fiona hugged him tightly. "Everything will be fine, right?" The revenge ended meaninglessly. Those who should have been punished were buried as if nothing had happened. What the Emperor did to my mother and Carl's mother, can we just let it go like that? Sigrun hugged Fiona tighter, burying his face in her shoulder. "I'm really okay. The most important thing for me now is to protect us. I don't want to ruin the future with you just because of anger. I'm just waiting for happy days with you." Then he wiped tears from the corner of Fiona's eyes. She said to him, "That's a relief. If you said you weren't okay earlier, I was going to ask how you could feel happy," Sigrun regretfully said. "So can you take back what you said earlier?" "You're so cute. Why don't you give me an encouraging kiss for that adorable thought?" Fiona shyly said, "That can wait. I'll think about it later." Sigrun suddenly stopped her words. Sigrun said, "Why are you hesitating?" "Whatever it is, don't worry, I just need to be by your side." Hearing Sigrun's words, Fiona boldly said she was thinking about going to Halo when facing Fiona in a dream. "I couldn't escape from that space as if I was stuck. Suddenly the jewel glowed, and I escaped from that dream. Without the jewel, I wouldn't have woken up so easily. I don't know exactly what power helped me escape. Clement Tedward only said it might be useful someday, but didn't explain clearly about the jewel's power. So I want to return to Halo, where Clement Tedward is sleeping, to learn more about this jewel. The thing that can defeat Shadow," she continued. "Sigrun, now I don't hesitate at any clue. I want to get rid of all those nightmares and dream of a happy future with you. I also look forward to our future no less than you. The longer we are together, the clearer that feeling becomes. Now I no longer hesitate. You have escaped the vicious cycle of revenge, and I think now it's my turn to escape the origin of everything. Maybe this really is the last chance to end it all." The reason I hesitate. Who wouldn't say these words? And the reason I gather all my courage to say it is because I just need you by my side. Can you come with me? I know this request might make me look selfish and it seems like I'm too greedy, but I still want to go with you. I don't want to be apart from you. Can I always be selfish with you like this? I'm so embarrassed, she said then, buried her face in Sigrun's chest. Sigrun pushed her away. He bent down. Fiona, if you say you become greedy because the person you want is me, then what can I refuse? Whether it's heaven or hell, as long as it's where you want to go, I will go with you. The place with you is where I belong. We will always be together. The next morning, Fiona and Sigrun grabbed their luggage preparing to go to Halo. Aben was stunned. Ha! In the end, everything turned out like this. Aben angrily questioned Sigrun. Do you know how many years I spent to make you emperor? All the efforts over the years were destroyed in an instant. Are you going to give the throne to Princess Arya? So easily? Sigrun happily replied. That position suits her, and my position is beside Fiona. Actually, my only dream for a long time has been to become Fiona's husband. Aben was speechless. The look between the two men sparked a flame. Fiona had to step in to stop them. Enough already. Both calmed down. Stop it. Aben glanced at Fiona's luggage and asked, But Fiona, what is all this luggage for? She held Sigrun's hand. Father, I have something to tell you. The cold winter, snow covered everything, white as far as the eye can see, creating a magical and beautiful picture. Sigrun's voice was gentle. We're here. The image of the magnificent palace appeared before Fiona's innocent eyes. She didn't know how long it had been since she last came to Halo. The two of them hand in hand walked up the stairs. She continued, this time returning. Everything seems a bit unfamiliar. A distant voice echoed. Lady Fiona, Prince Sigrun, welcome back to Halo. The voice just rose. Before them appeared the sunlit smiles of everyone around. They must love you so much, to give you such warm smiles. Seeing that, Fiona was deeply moved. Everyone, thank you all for coming to welcome us. How is everyone? All together. We are well, but sometimes we still miss you very much. Welcome everyone outside then. The two went inside to their room. The butler led them upstairs. The room was still intact as before. They could use it immediately. We have cleaned it thoroughly. When the room was opened, standing at the door, she asked the butler, This place has been kept all this time, right? The door opened as she asked, and was answered, Yes, that was the Duke's order. The room was opened. In her heart, Fiona seemed to hesitate. This place holds so many memories for her. She thought silently, For me? Besides Sigrun and Carl, my family still has a knot to untie. That knot is the one between me and my father. Going to see father, Fiona confessed. I have something to tell you, father. It is about the truth with me. She thought to herself, that day I told all the secrets I had hidden, that this world was created by myself and me. When he started investigating something and his schedule for going out was very unusual even for a guard like me, lately it's been hard to meet the prince. Fiona saw this and showed a face both annoyed and confused, her eyebrows furrowed tightly, Fiona's sweat dripping down, biting her lip. Fiona walked while thinking about what he was investigating. What exactly was he doing? Then she wondered, Sigrun, what are you doing? Are you avoiding me? Under the blue sky and white clouds, sunlight filtering through the leaves. A foot stepped forward, appearing before her.